In this lesson, we're going to set up our basic materials we're going to use for our diagrams. So let's get started. We're going to start by opening up our material editor from V-Ray. As you can see, there's no materials loaded yet because we're going to create them from scratch. So the way we're going to do that is to right-click on Scene Materials, go to Create Material, and choose a standard material. As you can see, a material was created with a diffuse layer, only the diffuse layer, as you can see here. And the standard color was set to more or less like a dark gray. Now the idea is that our diagrams are going to be light shades of gray. So let's change this color to an almost white tint. Let's scroll down and let's choose more or less this one, which is 250 for the RGB value, which is almost white, but not quite. Now the next thing we're going to do for this material is we're going to add a reflective layer to make the material a little bit reflective. We can do that by going to our material layer, right-click on our material and go to Create Layer and select the reflection layer. Now as you can see, a reflection layer got added with a lot of options. And the only option we're going to change is the reflection option. Click on the M, the big M. And text Fresnel, that's okay. That's the one we want to use. The only thing we're going to change is the perpendicular value, which we're going to set to gray. So that the reflections are not that harsh. And also we're going to change the IOR to 1.22. And if we're done, simply click OK. Another thing we're going to change is set the reflect. Instead of setting it to 1, we're going to set it a little bit lower to 0.65. So like I said, the reflection is not that harsh. And if you click on Preview, you see our material created. And as you can see, maybe closer to the bottom of the sphere, you can see that you see a little bit of reflection of the surroundings. So that's what we want. So the next thing we're going to do is to rename this material, and let's rename it to Context 3D, because this is going to be the material for our context. And if you don't, simply click OK. Now the thing is that we're going to use the same material, only the color is going to change a little bit, but the settings are going to be the same for the rest of our site. So instead of creating the material again from scratch, we can simply use this material and copy it over. We can do this by simply right-clicking on the Context 3D and select Duplicate Material. And let's rename this material to Streets. And let's repeat the process. So right-click and duplicate material. And let's rename this material to Sidewalks. Now right-click again and duplicate it one more time. And let's name this one Building Site. And the last one is going to be our people. So let's rename this one and let's name it People. Okay, nice. So let's set the settings for these materials again. We can do this by selecting material and simply changing the color in the diffuse layer. So let's start with our building site. And the building site is already set because we want to keep that one at 250. So that's fine. And the context 3D also. We also want to keep that one at 250 for the RGB. The people, we want to switch that one to completely black so they stand out. Nice. So for the sidewalks, we are also going to choose our white again. So 250 is fine. The only thing we're going to set more dark are the streets. So the streets pop a little bit more in our image, but just a little, just really, really gentle. So let's choose 225, like this one. Okay, great. So that was that. So now we can close the material editor because we have created all our materials. The only thing missing is we need to set the materials to our objects. And there's 3 ways to go about this. Let me explain them briefly, all 3. So if you open up your layers tab, these are all the layers with all the objects in them. I already sorted them out per layer, so that's really nice. That's why we're also going to use the first option, which is setting our objects by layer. You could also individually set objects by their material, depending on how you set up your model, but I prefer to set the whole layer to one material. So all the objects in that layer are going to get that material, let's say. So let me show you how to quickly set an object by its material, just an individual object. You would have to select this object, go to Properties, and go to Material. And here you can see the option. Its default setting is that the material is assigned by layer. But if you open this box, you'll see that you can either assign it by parent, which is the parent layer, or by object, let's say. So simply switch this one to object. And here you can actually choose individual settings for only that object. So if your layer would have the color red, for instance, and this object, you choose a material that has a color black, all the objects in that layer would turn out red, except this one, which would turn out black. So let's switch it back to layer. And let's start setting our materials according to the layers. And let's start with our building. Setting material is quite easy per layer. You can simply click on the small circle on the material from the layer, and another window will pop open. And on the left it will say assign material by plugin. And we want to change that one, we want to switch that one on because we're going to use the V-Ray plugin. And here you would have to click on browse. Another window will pop open, and in this window you just simply select the context 3D, which corresponds to our surrounding buildings. And click OK when you're done. Let's continue with the next one, which is the plot. So let's click on plot. And also the same procedure. So tick the checkbox next to assign material by plugin, hit browse, and select building site. For sidewalks and street, it's the same procedure. Great, so now we have set all our materials for our base setup, let's say. And let's do a test render to see how it turned out by simply hitting the big R from render. Great, so it started to look pretty nice. Like I explained before, we're going to keep our diagram as light as possible and use as little color as we can, because later on in Illustrator we're going to add the colors we need, but our base is always going to be a light render without a lot of, but like with slight detail, let's say. So let's close this window up. In our next lesson, we're going to add more detail to our materials by adding a toner material, which highlights the edges of the geometry.